Well, I'm kind of hoping maybe I hope we're kind of like Moses here. I'm just thinking within my own heart. I would rather be intrigued uh, than be like say, Saul of Tarsus and have to be knocked off my horse. I would rather have God kind of entice me to come along than to have to get, hit with the 2x4. Now, Saul of Tarsus, or the Apostle Paul in his pre-salvation days, was probably a pretty hard-headed guy. It sure seems like it. Very set in his ways and not willing to listen, even kicking against the convictions that he had, you know, been affected. He'd obviously seen these Christians as they suffered, and it was just the previous two chapters, in chapter 7, that Stephen was stoned, and he looked up to heaven and he asked for their forgiveness. And he must have seen the heart, the attitude, the incredible sense of peace that Stephen had in the midst of such great turmoil. And I'm sure that convicted him. I doubt that he possessed such a spirit. In fact, I think that's why it says there in Acts chapter 9, the early verses there, that he was kicking against the goads. He was being challenged in his conscience, and he was kicking against it. He was a hard-headed guy, kind of like you and me in many ways. But I'd rather be like Moses. I'd rather be drawn aside by a spectacle, something that kind of captures my attention, takes me out of the normal, intrigues me. How can this be? That there's a bush, it's on fire, but it's not being consumed. It's intriguing. And then to hear the voice of God, because I drew aside. Now, for all of us, it's really only two options. We can live in a kind of structured, legalistic uh, relationship. Many of us are this way in terms of our personality and our life. Everything is structured. We don't like a lot of change. We, don't want anything to, break the pattern. And here comes God. And he calls us out of the norm and asks us to turn aside, just take a look, be intrigued. I think spirituality is really all about this, being intrigued. When you listen to a message, are you intrigued with what you're hearing? Is there some aspect of it the Holy Spirit is calling you to? We talked last devotion about being called out of darkness and into his marvelous light, that this is what God is doing. He's showing us things. Are you intrigued? Well, if you think about it, for you and me, each one of us, if we're not intrigued, if there's no sense of, interest that's garnered in our relationship with God, then in all honesty, we're just living in the mundane, kind of ritualistic aspects, trying to feed our need for excitement or enthusiasm with other things. But Moses was intrigued, and then he was empowered. He actually heard the voice of God speak from the bush. Jesus himself spoke to him from the burning bush, and he entrusted him with a vision and a purpose. Think about it. And we all know the story there in Exodus chapter 3, that he was concerned about the authority that he would have, and God said, well, just throw your rod down. And that staff became a serpent. That was pretty interesting. A serpent that could easily have killed him, but that he actually had control over. I think it speaks to the fact that you and I, when we draw aside and we're intrigued by the things of God, we have a greater degree of authority over our own nature that has had quite an impact, a destructive impact on us in many ways. But then you'll notice in that chapter that he said that I have a speech impediment. I can't really speak well. God said, that's okay, you got a brother here. He's just coming to see you. And you know what? God always has a provision for any weakness that you and I might have. If he calls us, he provides. That's what we know. He always provides. So let's trust him today. Let's just be intrigued. Whether it's a devotion that you hear and it intrigues you, you want to go look at that. And the Holy Spirit says, I want you to think about this. Whether it be some aspect of life that you're looking at and you're seeing it with a different, set of eyes today. Let's be intrigued. Let's hear what God has to say to us as he draws us to himself. And then you know what? Let's realize that God not only calls us, but he gives us authority. If he commissions us, he commissions us under his authority. He says, Lo, I'm with you always. He started out in Matthew 28:18 with, all power has been given to me, and he ends it with, I'm with you always. So, not a bad deal, not a bad gig. And then lastly, let's know this. If we have weaknesses, our weaknesses become his strength. Isn't that what Paul said? 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Our weaknesses become his strength. Till next time, friends, God bless you.